What's up, dude?
Yeah. What's up, Joe?
Not too
Thank you
much.
for having me on.
Anytime, anytime. Yeah. It's been a bit more a mini podcast here, but yeah, it's always good to chat with you, man. I saw you a few weeks ago and Finland, here we are again on Zoom. So
Yeah, exactly. And you were just in Paris for the Forward Data Conference. Was that? I mean, I had total FOMO looking at it on
it's dope,
LinkedIn.
man. That's such a good conference.
Yeah.
I would say definitely go. I think it's gonna if they I was really impressed by how well the conference went. Like very few hitches, and the ones that I mean, the super minor, you wouldn't even notice if you didn't know what to look for. I think it stands a chance of being one of the best independent data conferences around. So you should definitely go.
Mm-hmm.
Hmm.
Ah, cool.
Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. I was chatting with Johan that I know.
Yeah.
I simply don't have had. I didn't have the time to come, but I
Oh
next
man.
year totally. I had such FOMO. I should have joined, but anyway,
You should have joined.
it's just how it is. Yeah, yeah, yeah.
It is. And
But
maybe next time you can talk about a topic that's near and dear to you, which
yes,
might what's that topic?
that topic would be the metagrid, right? I've been posting and discussing a lot about the metagrid lately, and the metagrid is a name that I use to describe a metadata architecture, and we've been discussing it very closely, obviously. Um, and so the metagrid really is an architecture that is similar to microservices and data mesh, but way smaller. It's for metadata, basically. And the
For the
idea is
audience out there,
to
can we back up? What's metadata?
Yeah, yeah, yeah. That's a good question, right, Joe? Because many people tend to think of metadata in subcategories like technical metadata, operational metadata, business metadata. There's absolutely nothing wrong in that. That's very typical for the data community, and there's nothing wrong with that. But the way I define metadata is really that what characterizes metadata is not what it is, but where it is. It's two
Mhm.
places at once. It's at source with what you want to describe, but it's also somewhere else to make what you're describing retrievable, like discoverable. You can search for it, right? So think of a book. It's the most obvious example. All the metadata, or much of the metadata, is in the beginning of the book. Right in the beginning of the book, the number of pages, the publisher, the year of publication, all of that. Just
Let's
like it's
look at
always
the book
there,
here. So
right?
we got publisher data here. We
Exactly,
got table of contents.
exactly,
Then we
all
might
that.
have an index, notes at the back. So that's all metadata.
Yes, I mean, depending on your interpretation of what you want to expose, because
Yeah.
everything can be metadata. But the point here is it's both at source with, in this case, the book, and somewhere else.
Okay.
For example, on Amazon. So you can
Hmm.
search the book on Amazon. You can search the publisher because if you like it, at a publisher, a certain publisher, then you can search for that publisher. If you like a certain author, then you can search for that, and so on and so on. So metadata really ties something together to make it discoverable, searchable. So it has to be in two places at once. And so that definition is a definition that I really hammer on in my upcoming book, Fundamentals of Metadata Management, because I argue that what we are missing in terms of metadata management practices in the data community and beyond, in fact, also in other communities, is the fact that if we only do a bottom-up exercise, trying to say, okay, I want to expose this operational metadata, I want to expose this technical metadata, if we only do that with the data source, each and every time we have a big schema or like some unstructured data floating around, if that's the only thing we do, then we will create a cacophony of metadata. Because
Mm.
if you look at that globally, it won't make any sense for people. And that's what I've seen throughout my career. I've seen so many different systems. You know, you want to do ESG, you want to do information security, you want to be data driven, you want to operate your IT landscape through like IT service management tools, all of that. There's nothing wrong with any of these initiatives. But as an enterprise architect and as a leader in the data space, I have seen the same repetition of exercise is performed so many times throughout my almost 20 years of work life now, right? And the problem really is that once we perform this repetition, or each time we perform this repetition, we paint a different picture of the same landscape. And so nothing matches. And it's
Mm,
nobody's fault. It's not the consultants helping companies onboard these technologies. It's certainly not the software vendors either. And it's not the fault of any employees. The problem is that they are all kind of trapped in a motivation to implement software to solve a task. But nobody's looking at that totality across all these tools saying, why don't we unite forces? And that's kind of been my blessing and curse, if you will, throughout my career. That I've been blessed and cursed with this, like this observation that we need to change this, or we don't need to change the situation. But if we change the situation, I know that we can get a lot more value from the technologies we use, from the consultants we work with, and the employees we have in our company. And it's just really, we would be so much more efficient at what we do if we can change the situation. And so that's what I suggest with the metagrid. That's the metagrid architecture that I put forward in my book, Fundamentals of Metadata Management. It's really about like how do we make sure that the way we depict, say, a process or an application or a project or a server is the same in an endpoint management system, in an
mm,
information security management system, in our data catalog, and so forth. So it's this coming together of disciplines and technologies, teams, and working across these metadata silos that I take the liberty to call them that. That can really change the situation. So I'm very, very influenced by all kinds of decentralized architecture patterns, microservices, and data mesh, obviously as big ones, big elephants in the room. I'm very, very occupied with, you gave me that advice. I'm talking about a data discovery team needing to do like the coordination of this. You said not another data team. We cannot have more data teams. It's not what the industry wants. The money is not there. And that really pushed me towards what I was already describing, but I realized, okay, I need to describe it like this. It's a virtual team. It's a team topology. It's a topology of teams. So I
mm,
put together the existing teams and I said, depending on the focus that we have in this particular type of metadata, one team should be like the big one, and then you have the support, the various supporting teams for this big team, driving together a definition and of the metadata that will not be harmonized. It will be okay. I realize I'm totally ranting here. So, do
mm.
you want to
No,
have
it's fine.
the
Go
time
for
to
it.
ask a question? I'm just, you just press the play button. I'm just ranting away. But anyway, it's just like this. Okay, to finalize this phrase, right? A topology of teams working with metadata repositories would always take a point of departure in what we want to depict. So let's say we depict an application. You would most certainly need an enterprise architecture management tool. You would need a configuration management database. You would need endpoint management systems. But you would perhaps always also talk to a data protection officer to make sure that the applications listed also are listed in their repositories. But there's um, there's a catch to this. You need to take into account different meta models, because all these technologies, they
Mhm.
come with distinct meta models, and they depict the same thing in different ways, and they do that deliberately. So if you have an application, if you define it in an enterprise architecture context, it will be one thing. But if you define it in a CMDB context, it will be another thing. It's an easy example, so I use it a lot. You
Mhm.
will need instances of the applications in the CMDB, and you will need like the versioning of the various configurations of those instances in the CMDB. And you need that for auditing, for reporting to authorities, for compliance, and other boring stuff. But you need it. So it's not something like regulated industries need that. And you wouldn't need that in, say, a data protection officer's tool. It wouldn't be necessary, but they are obliged by regulation to have their own tool and depict the same thing. And there's so many teams doing that in companies, and none of them are doing anything wrong, but they're not working very well together, and that's just such a pity. So anyway, that was my that was my
Well,
rant.
I mean, you've mentioned that the metagrid has kind of always existed. Like it's been
Yeah,
staring us in the face this
totally.
entire time. Why do you think we've been blind to it?
I think we've been blind to it because um, so I have different interpretations of this. I don't think there is one reason. I think there's several, and I call that particular chapter in my book "The Good, the Bad, and the Ugly." After Sergio Leone's spaghetti western, obviously, and you can call it, you can say people have good intentions, people have sometimes very naive intentions, saying but this tool will save everything, that it will be the single view of the world, it will be the one pane of glass, it would be like I've heard all these metaphors like the one entry to all of it, and so you can have a good intention, but it's also a very naive intention to think that one particular metadata repository will depict the entirety of the metadata landscape. And then you can have the evil intention also. And the evil
Hmm.
intention, like the bad intention, that would be like a software pusher, someone saying I just need to sell my software, and a consultant saying I just need to bill hours, and then and also an internal employee saying I just need my promotion, I don't care about the context of this technology, I just need my promotion, I want to be the VP, so I'm going to implement this, I'm going to force everyone to use this tool, I'm going to say it's going to solve our problems, and so that's the bad intention. And then you have the ugly version of this. And I think, for me personally, that's where I am. That's the ugly version, because the ugly version is that people haven't really been like aware of this. Like there are some people that have bad intentions, but I don't think the majority of people in organizations have bad intentions at all. I think
Right.
that quite a lot of people have perhaps good intentions, but also a little naive intentions of what technology can do. And so what I argue in my book is, and I should be careful about this, but I really pitch it as an ugly architecture, because it's not an ideal architecture, but it will work. I can guarantee you it will work. But it's not the ideal, like it's not the most, it's not an blockchain agentic AI powered large language model, like a shiny object that will kill all metadata issues from the present and forever forward. That's not what I argue, but I can provide a solution.
It's
So
interesting.
that's well, thank you.
Well, do you envision a world? Because it feels like metadata has sort of been this like redheaded stepchild that's been kind of left
Yeah.
off, and now we're finally getting around to talking about it. Do you feel like the field of metadata also needs to undergo some changes, like maybe better standardization? Because I'm imagining a situation if you have decentralized metadata, but it's all connected, that you'd want to have some way that the metadata is at least somewhat coherent between different locations. Does that make sense, or
Yeah,
would that
yeah,
lead you not want
totally.
to do that?
Like the question makes sense. My answer would be that you would never like, I've seen, so when people talk about standards, it's typically the same kind of conversation that when they talk about in-state architectures,
Mm.
it's really an illusion. And it's not to say
Yeah.
that we can't obtain that sometime in the future. I would wish that companies were as interoperable as the web, but in many cases, in the vast majority of cases, there is not a Jeff Bezos memo floating around in the majority of companies in this world. So,
Remind people what the
meaning
Jeff
that,
Bezos memo was, by the way. It's pretty funny.
oh, okay, well, let's see. That's not in my book, Joe. I can't remember it by heart. But anyway, you need to be able to have, you need to be able to make API calls to every single application that you have in the company. You cannot have point-to-point integrations. There are no backdoor solutions. And if you don't do that, you're fired. That was one of the best technological decisions made by an executive I dare say, since the invention of computers. I mean,
Yeah,
it's for in a corporate setting, that is a brilliant decision. But in the vast majority of companies, that's not the case. But I don't think people should be like, if you're an ambitious employee, I don't think you should be disappointed by working in a company that does not have that reality.
sure.
And I bet they also have problems in Amazon depicting their own internal IT landscape still.
Oh, I know a lot of people at Amazon. I'm yes.
Yeah, you have to cut it out if you think you can't say that on air.
No,
But
no, it's
I'm
fine.
pretty
I
sure they
keep it
have
pretty
those.
vague, but every company has issues. I'll say the ones,
Yeah,
even the ones
sure.
that you think are very technically advanced and have a lot of smart people, I would say um, the problems don't go away. In fact, they sometimes get worse, I would say. But anyway, that's a topic for a much different rant. But yeah,
Yeah,
you do have all these systems though, and tons and probably millions of systems in some companies. It's insane.
obviously.
Yeah.
But anyway, to finish the point, right? I I advise for an I'm not sure I can remember the question, but I advise for an architecture that is pragmatic. Some would call it a little ugly, but it's doable. It's perfectly doable to make a metagrid that I call it.
Yeah.
So to avoid any confusion, I'm not talking about metadata products in this
Hmm.
architecture. I'm talking about metadata movement, because metadata tends to move as things happen over time. It's also why it's not a graph, because imagine the birth of a project, right? That project is born in a, perhaps it's born in a project and portfolio management tool. It's being scoped, then it's being agreed upon that we do it. Then the same project travels to a DevOps tool, some kind of DevOps tool where you break down the tasks, you write code if you need to write code. And once that's been done, well, you transition to another solution, such as I don't know, you registered in the already mentioned CMDB because you have a running application of some sort, right? Uh, and so capturing the metadata of that is not something that you do at one point in time.
Hmm.
It's movement. It's movement over time. So you have to define architecture decision records. You have to do diagrams of this. If you have data sets, you have obviously exposed data sets. You can do that in very clunky ways. I don't care. I mean, it's not the technology that's the important thing here. It's the contextualization that is technically demanding, because you
Hmm.
have to understand, you have to have a very deep technical understanding to be able to understand what a metagrid is. So that's the challenge in this context.
So, in your book, are you going to tell people how they can, um, I guess, implement or do Metagrid at their company?
Yes, I do have examples, and I'm working on making them specific. I have a loathing against unspecific diagrams, but I have been criticized for that because my diagrams are impossible to read. So I need to have a more like a I need to have a more like I need to embrace that people need to understand what I mean in my diagrams. So I need to add some small figures of people and some arrows and stuff like that. And
Hmm.
I do understand my critics at this point. So
What's the feedback you've
yeah.
been getting so far?
So the feedback so far, and I'm still writing, right? The book will be out in less than half a year, but I'm still writing. And so far, I have not talked with industry practitioners saying this is not the case. I have been like, had it's been so overwhelming to see all the people reaching out and saying, wow, finally someone that gets this. That's for the industry practitioners, people really working in companies. Then for software vendors, I've had kind of like the vast majority just think it's cool and fun. But I also have like two kind of misunderstandings. There's certain software vendors that says, well, our tool can do all this. And I'm just saying, but no, you leverage a specific capability. If you're an enterprise architecture management tool, like I know cool vendors in that space. I don't think I should mention them here, but I know some cool vendors. That they are intended to predict the future. like mechanical precise descriptions of a future state in an IT landscape. That's good enterprise architecture. I think it's perceived a little differently in the US than here in Europe, but anyway, it's not just pushing a framework or doing
Hmm.
drawings. That's not good enterprise architecture. That's just doing drawings, right? But they leverage a specific capability with their tool, and all these tools they leverage a specific and needed capability. And so some software vendors say, "Well, we can do all this," and I'm just saying, "Well, no, you can't, because you're leveraging a specific capability that I'm defining in the book, obviously." But the majority of vendors are slowly getting that this is about a contextualization that goes outside of their own solution.
Yeah.
And there's nothing wrong with that. They are needed in the metagrid, but they are not the metagrid. And so consultancies tend to do the same. Some consultants say, well, I can map business processes like no one else. I'm the best at mapping business processes. So forget about your business process mapping tool, or forget about your own internal diagrams. I can do it better than you. And the problem is, like, they're just doing another version of a truth where they're collectively destroying the truth. But there's only a small handful of consultants saying that. The vast majority also, luckily, think it's cool. So overall, the three parties that I address here: software vendors, consultants, and internal employees. Like the feedback that I've been getting, and it's been a little massive at this point, is very, very positive, and I'm very thankful for that. So
That's cool.
yeah,
That's cool.
and that's
I still owe you a review of some chapters, I think, too. Get on that when I come back.
don't worry about it. I just brief you about the context here, the content here, Joe. So don't worry
Yeah, no
about
worries.
it.
It's all
I'm
good,
so
man.
thankful that you're reading along.
It's
That's
it's
really cool.
it's coming along really well. I think when I first saw it, I was kind of like, "What? What are you doing?"
Yeah.
But then it started making more sense. So, and I think a
Me
lot of
too.
people may have that reaction too. They're kind of like, "Ole, like, what's going on?"
Yeah.
Then you start thinking about it a bit more, and you're like, "Okay, this makes sense." But like you say, it's one of those things where you're describing a reality that's been staring us in the face the entire time, right? But I don't think anyone's. But I think maybe we've just been very narrowly focused on this aspect of thinking about metadata, right? Where you say it is,
Yeah.
or focus on the use cases and not the how everything sort of contextually interconnects, and that's cool. I mean, it's part of this broader play that I'm seeing with decentralization in the world, obviously with data mesh and so forth, and microservices. It was a long time ago, and um, even stuff like Blue Sky, right? I mean, that's just decentralized protocol,
Yeah.
platform. So it's cool. I like decentralization. Any
Yeah. I've
parting
been
words? 'Cause
looking
I know
into Blue Sky.
you
Okay,
should
come again. Sorry.
join Blue Sky. It's dope. I'm on there. Well,
Yeah, sure, sure. I will. I will.
yeah. Well, it's good to have you on. I know short episode. I have
Yeah.
to get to some other calls and go take a nap in a second. But
Yeah, sure.
yeah, let's keep in
Sure.
touch. So, actually, see you
Definitely.
at
Thank
Day
you
to Day
for.
Texas, by the way.
Yes, yes, yes. I will come to Day Texas. I look forward to being there. I'm happy to know you are also there. I must admit I haven't checked the participant list, but I look forward to catch up, Joe. And
Stacked.
I look forward to going to Day Texas. It's such a cool event
It
to
is. It
put together.
is. Get some beers and barbecue. So
Yeah, I look forward to it. Yeah.
awesome, man. All right. Have a good
Okay.
one. Later.
You too. Have a good one. Bye.